You might be interested in joining the Army, and you might talk to an Army veteran, maybe someone who's currently in the Army, and they may tell you, don't join the Army. It's horrible, it's the worst thing they ever did, whatever, right? That sometimes happens, and I want to kind of explain to you why that sometimes happens. What's up, my friends? U.S. Army veteran Christopher Chaos, and today I want to talk to you about why commonly it might be possible that someone hates the United States Army. I make these videos to educate you about the Army. I'm not trying to claim that it's the greatest thing in the world, it's the worst thing in the world. It really depends on your own experiences, as that will kind of determine your kind of outlook on the United States Army, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. In my personal experience, I wasn't someone that hated the Army, but I wasn't someone who loved the Army. I was kind of somewhere in the middle, and that makes it easy for me to create this type of content because I'm not trying to push the Army on you to say that it's the greatest thing, but I'm also not trying to deter you from joining the Army. I'm trying to let you make your own decision. I'm trying to put out the facts, put the experiences out there, and let you make your own decision, because some people, you know, they have a great time in the Army. It's the greatest thing in the world. They want to spend 20 plus years in the Army. And then you have individuals that maybe want to get out as soon as possible and do something else because they absolutely hate it. I was in that middle kind of area where I was like, this is okay. It's not the greatest thing. I don't absolutely hate my life, but I will always use the Army more as a experience to lead to bigger and better things. Have that military background, have that military experience to help me be a better person, to better my chances for a better job opportunity in my civilian life. So I have 5 things here that may make someone into that category of they hate the Army, and they'll tell you do not join the Army because it's horrible. So in no particular order, the first one is it's not what they expected. This can come many different ways. Maybe the recruiter wasn't truthful, right? It happens sometimes, you know, not all recruiters like that, right? Some recruiters are really desperate to get soldiers in the Army. They may bend the truth a little bit, maybe leave some things out. Other ones are pretty honest with you. So that really is like kind of a coin toss sometimes of if you're gonna get a really honest one, or if you're gonna get one that's maybe a little bit crooked and they're just kind of desperate to get you to join the Army. So they're gonna start telling you some crazy things, you know, to try to get you to join. So maybe the recruiter told that individual that they're gonna get to be able to do this and do that, and then they start doing their MOS, start doing their job in the Army, and that didn't happen. It's not at all like the recruiter made it sound like, so they hate it, right? They had these high expectations based on what the recruiter was telling them, then they finally get in the Army, and it's not what the recruiter told them it was gonna be like. Sometimes it's just poor research. Maybe that individual looked into the Army to see what it was gonna be like. They saw certain material about, you know, what maybe that MOS might be like, in, you know, going into the Army, and then it turned out not to be like that. So their expectations were at one level, and then it turned out to be not at all what they thought it was gonna be like. For me, like, there wasn't any of these videos, none of this stuff on YouTube really, so I actually probably had lower expectations of it being kind of crappy, but I really wanted the experience to have that background, so I was like willing to suck it up and kind of do it, and then it turned out to be better than my expectations were because I already had pretty low expectations, but it turned out to be a little bit better, so that was a little bit helpful for me. But some people maybe were told that, oh yeah, you're gonna get to do this and this and this, and everything's gonna be super awesome and great, and then it, you know, maybe it's not as great as they thought it was, so they end up hating the Army. Number 2 is the leadership. That happens sometimes. I mean, I feel like that can be a thing even in the civilian world too. You could be working anywhere in the civilian workforce and you have that really crappy manager that just makes your day horrible and you hate going to work because of it. It's no different in the Army, right? Sometimes you have NCOs, first sergeants, commanders, whatever, that just have different leadership styles, and those leadership styles may not be what you kind of want them to be, and they're really strict and it makes your life hell. And sometimes it's also just they're crappy leaders too, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily that they're just really hard on you. Sometimes they are crappy leaders too because they've gotten so used to a rhythm of doing things this way, even if it's the wrong way, and it makes your life miserable because of it. And now you end up hating the Army because you hate your leadership. Having a good leadership definitely will make it a little bit easier, right? You may love a duty assignment, you may love that unit that you're in because you got great leadership that looks after you, and that's what you're obviously looking for. But then you have situations sometimes like this where a soldier ends up with leadership that is just, you know, not what they were hoping for, not a good fit for their personality, whatever, right? There's a lot of kind of scenarios that kind of fall into there, and that can lead to a soldier hating being in the Army. I try to say, you know, try not to judge your experience of being in the Army based on one duty assignment, right? You know, that may be, you know, really strict leadership or set on certain ways, you know, and everything like that. And then you go to another unit and maybe leadership is different. Maybe they have a better style that kind of meshes better with you and you enjoy it and you enjoy working for them. You feel like they're really looking out for you and helping you improve. And then you end up liking that unit. So then it turns around that you like the Army. But You get stuck with, units that have that leadership style you don't like, or multiple units with leadership styles like that, then yeah, it can give you a negative experience and make you hate being in the Army. For me, my first duty assignment, it was okay, nothing too crazy. Second duty assignment was great. I had great leadership, so it kind of made me like being in the Army kind of a thing, to a certain extent type of thing. Then I came to Fort Carson, Colorado, my first unit when I went to Colorado. That one was okay, not too bad. The next unit was good-ish at the beginning, and it started kind of going downhill, getting bad, so it really just pushed my momentum for wanting to get out of the Army like I really wanted to in the first place, but I don't feel like it necessarily ruined my entire Army experience. But kind of the last, I don't know, maybe year of being in the Army was probably the worst year of my Army career, just based on the leadership and certain leadership styles that maybe I'll have to save for another video, but leadership can make a difference. Before we get into the third one, I'd love to hear from maybe some of you veterans out there, what's something that made you enjoy the Army or hate the Army, so that way you can help out maybe some other people that are watching this video because they're interested in, what can possibly turn the directions of the tides to loving or hating the Army. So definitely leave me some comments down below, but let's get into that third thing. The third one can be maybe a unit that is very active. That can cause a soldier to not like being in the Army because they're just constantly in the field, they're constantly going on deployments, and they have no free time. I mean, if you go and you're just doing all work and no play, then that makes you a dull boy, or however the saying kind of goes. But you don't want that. You don't want it to be just working your ass off and then getting very little time to yourself to be able to do the things you enjoy. Maybe you have a spouse and a family and you want to spend a little bit of time with them. But if you're just constantly away from everybody, away from your family, away from the things you enjoy doing with your spare time, then that kind of creates a negative outlook on the Army. So that can happen. I've talked to individuals before where they're like, oh, I didn't like being in the Army. I was just always in the field. I barely even saw my family. I didn't even get to see the birth of my child, whatever, right? That can definitely cause a soldier to hate being in the United States Army. So, hopefully you can get something in the medium, right? You don't end up with a unit that necessarily deploys a bunch, but they have to do training. That's a thing they have to do. So you're going to have to go to the field. You may even have to go on a deployment. It may not even be a combat deployment with the current kind of state of the Army, but it may be a training deployment that may take you, out of the country for 6 months, a year, whatever. But hopefully you don't end up in a situation where it's just constantly, every other week, twice a month, once a month, whatever, to where it gets to the point where you just feel like you don't get any you time to be able to have some fun, enjoy things, spend time with family if you have one, because that can definitely kind of screw up your aspect of the United States Army. Number 4 is more of a self-inflicted type of thing. They make it hard on themselves, which causes them to hate the Army. What I mean by this is you'll have soldiers that they're late all the time. They're doing the wrong thing. They're trying to find ways to get out of work. They're trying to do whatever they possibly can to not have to do these tasks or whatever. And they get in trouble for it, or they have negative consequences for it, whatever. And so, they're getting constantly ridiculed and yelled at by their leadership, and it causes them to hate being in the Army, but it's for their own reasons. So that can happen, like I said, because of their own fault, right? They think that they're doing nothing wrong, right? They think that, they're just doing their job or whatever. Maybe they knowingly know that I'm trying to get out of this work or whatever, but they somehow blame it on, the system, the Army, the leadership, the something. But you're the one that's showing up late all the time. You're the one that's trying to get out of this work. You're the one that when all of us are doing this in the motor pool or this in this location, you're nowhere to be found. And then you get yelled at for it, or you get, not treated the same as the rest of us because we're busting our ass and you're not anywhere to be found. It's because of your own fault. I've seen a couple of soldiers that are like that. They hate being in the Army, and maybe something, that I previously mentioned caused them to have that attitude where they're like, oh man, this leadership sucks, or this, field environment of going all the time sucks, so I don't want to put in my effort anymore. And it causes them to kind of go down that path, and then, just increases the reason why they hate being in the Army. There can be times where it's hard to keep that motivation going and everything, especially if you have some of those situations where the job that you signed up for isn't what you thought it was going to be, and you're just not motivated to want to do that job. So that can definitely kind of cause you to even go down that path too, to just not care. And then that kind of causes more problems and just spirals and snowball effects, and your problems get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the reasons why you hate being in the Army just get bigger and bigger as well. The fifth and last one that I'll tell you about, maybe a little bit less common of reasons why soldiers hate being in the Army compared to the other ones, but it may be for a reason that they feel like the Army is holding them back from their goals or maybe even their dreams. An example of this that I might give you is maybe someone either had the inspiration before they joined the Army or they gained it while they're in the Army to maybe want to be like a business owner, maybe be an entrepreneur. And now, because they're in the Army, they can't really pursue that dream. They can't go and chase after being that businessman, that businesswoman, that entrepreneur to be able to go after that kind of goal because they still have years left on their contract. Maybe they sign like a 6-year contract, right? And maybe a couple years into it, they're like, man, that'd be so cool to do this business or do this kind of idea or whatever for myself and run my own kind of business. But crap, I still got like 4 years left on my Army contract. So I got to keep on doing that because I can't start this business until I get out of the Army. So sometimes that might happen, right? They have dreams and goals that they want to accomplish, but they have an Army obligation to still kind of abide by. They still have to kind of stick with that and fulfill that contract. It may not even be like a business adventure. Maybe it's some kind of like a sports adventure. Maybe they want to go pursue a life of boxing, be in the NFL. They want to, try to join the Olympics. I mean, there are certain kind of aspects of that you can kind of do in the Army. They have the athlete program that you can kind of do, that you can try out for. And if you make the team, then you can do like boxing and Olympics type of things. They don't have NFL, but they have certain kind of things in that lines that you could possibly do. But let's say if you're not good enough, you don't make it, then, you can't do that, I guess. But maybe it was dreams outside of being a business person. Maybe you want to be a musician, and you can kind of do that, I guess, while you're still in the Army, but you can't really go on tour, if you made it big. But you can just still create music, I guess, in the barracks or at home. But there's, I guess, several different types of scenarios you could probably think of that, maybe you have this dream, this goal, and because you have a commitment to the Army, to go to the field, to go on these deployments, to work that job, to be in that location, you can't actually chase after those dreams and really kind of pursue them to the full extent. You might have the ability to do a little bit of prep work and everything like that, but you can't actually fully commit to it because you're, pretty busy with your Army life. There are still some things you could go after. You could go after being a YouTuber. You can go after being a musician to a certain extent. You can go on tour, but definitely you want to be a business owner, an entrepreneur. There may be certain ways that you can do certain types of ones, while you're still in the Army, but you're trying to start up like a franchise, a store, and all this other stuff, that may be a little bit bigger picture. The Army might be holding you back from that, and you just have to kind of write out that contract. And people develop a hate for the Army because they're like, I would just be rather doing this dream, this goal, than doing this job, this MOS in the United States Army. The thing that kind of made me start kind of hating the Army in my last year of being in the Army was just bad leadership. I probably should do a video that kind of explains some other examples, but I just had this really crummy platoon sergeant, my last platoon sergeant that I had, that was kind of mad at the Army because they weren't allowing that person to retire. So I feel like they were taking out on us. There was just things that like double standards of not allowing us to do things. Like a good example was, we went on a field problem to the National Training Center, and that individual did not bring the plates. They went inside the vest. So while we were all wearing plates, this person was not wearing plates. And when it came time for the live fire range, that person was like, oh crap, I don't have plates. And you have to have the plates for the live fire range. And so that platoon sergeant borrowed plates from one of the younger soldiers and made that soldier go do a detail, and we were all pissed about it. And it was annoying. That was just one of many things that individual did, and I probably should explain that better in another video, but we won't get onto that tangent just yet. We'll kind of leave it at that, I think, for now.